Okay, first of all, let's talk about what do we mean by invisible, and then we'll address this to the question of apparitions and spirits and all other forms of, quote, invisible beings. What science has taught us, which I find to be utterly extraordinary, is that our visual experience, which is totally brilliant, only sees a tiny sliver of all the vibrations of photons that exist in the known universe. So if I look outdoors, for example, and I can see tens of thousands of rocks and tens of thousands of leaves and hundreds of thousands of hues of colors and shapes and sizes, it can fill my consciousness, my visual consciousness, with all these details. And yet all that complexity and all that experience is more than, I don't explain how tiny the sliver is. Let me give you an example of how little we see. If we imagine the size of the Empire State Building as reflecting all the known frequencies of light that exists in this room right now, and then we ask how much of those vibrations can we see with our naked eye? Okay? Do we see 50 stories, 10 stories worth of the vibration, 1 story of the vibration, 1 foot of the vibration? What science tells us is the amount that we see in our consciousness is smaller than the grain of sand. So what we are seeing with all this breadth is a grain of sand compared to the Empire State Building of vibration, of light. So most things that exist are, quote, invisible to us. Our senses are extraordinarily limited. Our normal senses are extraordinarily limited. But we can go beyond those senses when we develop certain higher forms of awareness and consciousness. We can also do it with science. In fact, what science can be thought of as the process of making the invisible visible. We take frequencies we cannot see, and then we transform them. We either increase them or decrease them and put them into the little grain of sand of the spectrum that we can see. And now all of a sudden we can see the invisible with technology. So once you become aware that most of what exists is invisible and it's all light, it's all light. We're talking about just the vibrations of photons here. Then the idea that there could be apparitions, or there could be angels, or there could be any number of beings or processes that are not part of our everyday experience becomes extraordinarily plausible. We just have to then use our technology and apply it to these processes, these questions, these beings. And that's what's happening now in science. We're beginning to take this super sensitive technology, develop for other purposes, and we're applying it to these other realms.
But if I'm sleeping, I can go into like a different state of consciousness where I'll like wake up, but my body won't be awake, and I can see like people sitting on my bed. And it always depends on what state I'm in as well, or what types of energies I'm attracting to me. Now that I'm working on a clearer energy, I usually attract guides and things like that who can communicate to me through the night. Okay, so my aunt, actually it happened when I was 19 years old. I'd been seeing like spirits on and off as a child, but never really taking it seriously. But when I was about 19 years old, my aunt had died probably 4 years before that, but I was going through a tough stage, and I was looking for a transition. And one night I was asleep, and my body was paralyzed, obviously, because your body goes into that state sometimes when you sleep. And then I must have just been drifting off, and it was like my astral body sat up out of my body, and I remember looking down and seeing my body down there. And then there was a lady sitting on my windowsill, and she was a lot younger, and I didn't communicate verbally to her, but it was a telepathic thing. I could tell that, I was connecting with her thoughts and she was connecting with mine. And I said to her in my thoughts, "Who are you?" And as soon as I said that, I got a flash of my auntie when she was about 83 years old. I think that was the age when she died. And then I knew that it was her, so I started saying, you know, why are you here? What do you need to give me a message? And she just started to telepathically tell me that everything's okay and you need to move to Sydney, which was across the other side of the country. And there had been a few thoughts coming into my mind about wanting to move and needing a transition because I felt really stuck. But because I was so young, it was really hard to make such a decision to move across country. So she kind of came to me and she guided me a little bit, and then I just laid back in my body, and I woke up the next morning and I remembered it all so vividly, and that sort of made me make that grounded decision. And then I left probably about 6 months later.
So how did it affect you to see someone, I mean, did it confirm for you that we live on, to see someone that was your own relative?
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people are skeptic out there because maybe they haven't had the experience. And I think as a child, I had a lot of those types of experiences, but because older people and parents and things like that, it's not really the thing to believe, I kind of shut it out. But having a deep experience like that and seeing my auntie come to me and actually being able to come out of my body and for it to be so real just really reconfirmed it in my mind.
Yes, when I was little, when we first moved into Arizona, I put my hand down by a lizard and the lizard just crawled onto me. And I just like animals a lot and I like to save their lives sometimes.
What do you think of Nula?
She's cute.
She's really happy with you. She looks all blissed out. So Alex, you just saw a man in our house?
Yep, outside the bathroom window.
Right out, he was outside the house.
Yeah.
Can you show me, walk with me and show me where...
Appear and disappear, or?
No, I just saw him. He was, see that big bush right there?
Yeah.
The big giant, he was sitting right under it.
Under the tree?
Yeah.
Right to the right?
It was all the way up there.
All the way there. Wow. So you're drawing a picture of him that you just saw him? Okay, let's go look at your picture that you're going to draw. I'm getting goosebumps like crazy. Look at me. Look at my goosebumps.
Oh, you are. I can go get some. I really want to
I've got goosebumps.
You draw feet.
I felt a very native Indian presence. The last time we were up in Sedona.
Is there a way for people, I mean, these invisible cities like Shambhala, I mean, again, when the mind is pure, do they actually see
Shambhala is not a city. Shambhala supposedly is a country with 96 million inhabitants
Wow.
near the North Pole, somewhere like in the North Pole area, surrounded by all kind of rows of ice mountains, and with a force field that covers it that makes it invisible. But it's a huge country and they have 96 provinces, each one with 1 million citizens, and it's 96 capitals. The central one, Kalapa, is there. I mean, in the legend of Shambhala, that's what Shambhala is. Not like one city.
Right.
That's like a confusion. You know?
So
And it's not in the Gobi and all that. It's a confusion. It's somewhere like in the north of Mongolia, therefore in the North Pole area.
Yeah,
No, Shambhala's up there in about 300-400 years. Apparently the veil is lifted and we see Shambhala. And
Right.
then the Shambhalans kind of help us out and get us past our phase of militarism. And then the Dharma becomes very widespread for about 1,800 years, supposedly.
300 or 400 you said from now? That will
Yeah,
happen?
300 or 400 years from now.
From now, Shambhala will reveal itself.
Yeah.
That's
And then it interacts. You know, there's a little bit of a buffeting, a little bit of
That's
bit
incredible.
of a scrap, and then like an Armageddon type of scrap. But then basically the whole planet goes toward peace, and there's a golden age of 1,800 years, they say. But I can't imagine that it would be only 1,800 years, but maybe. And there's a very golden age of people being very loving and developing wisdom, a lot of education, a lot of meditation, and a lot of spirituality, and way past violence, equality of the genders, you know, the sexes, male and female, no more male dominated, but also not female dominated, but equality. And a really wonderful era, they believe, will ensue at that time. And I'm always protesting with the Tibetans that I think their calculations are wrong, because I don't think the planet can last that long under the present stress of militarism and exploitation, and that it should they're either they're hiding the true calculation or the calculation
Should
is
be
off.
sooner.
And it should be sooner, I feel, but personally. But that's just my own, they just laugh when I say that. Dalai Lama actually says that he doesn't believe in it at all. That he's not into prophecies. That people should live according to the practice that they can do right then and there. Shouldn't sit waiting for something to happen.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's what he likes to say. And in another sense, there's a few stray theories that actually Shambhala's already here, and it's a matter of turning your awareness. And then you just don't even notice all these morons running around shooting each other.
Well, essentially what happens is your spirit you find yourself cooking through some last edges of resistance. You find yourself becoming so present in this very moment. You're so inside of your body. You're so dealing with any edges of resistance that you might be feeling somewhere in your energy system. And by surrendering deeply into it, by going into it as opposed to skipping out and avoiding it in some way, by going right through the core of your last resistances, it's like suddenly you feel all of your energy almost like releasing and expanding. And my experiences often have been through the third eye, where there's like last areas of resistance, and the energy just, it kind of like it burns through there, and suddenly there's an expansion, and you realize that, oh my God, more of me is outside of my body than is in my body, yet you are simultaneously in your body. And you have the peculiar sensation of being in a place of singularity where there are no boundaries.
And I did my first 3-day intensive Buddhist retreat where you sit. We had, all these people, like 20 or 30 people in our house, and my dad led this retreat, and you sat cross-legged, back straight, 1 hour at a time, 5-minute break, 1 hour at a time, 5-minute break. And by the end of the day, you're meditating 12 hours. I mean, I've climbed mountains, I have skied down, 55-degree slopes, I've jumped off 30-foot cliffs, I've planted trees for 22 years, and I'm telling you, there's nothing harder than sitting in this posture, cross-legged with the hands folded and the legs crossed, back straight, with not leaning against the wall, sitting for 12 hours a day. It is the hardest thing I've ever done. And it's not only physically challenging to hold that posture for so many hours a day, but it's mentally challenging just to stare into my mind and my thoughts and my emotions